Hi, I am Mia Lamont, your host for the Brand Disruptors podcast. I've been a disruptor all my life, and I'm here to help other women step into their own greatness so that they can get paid to be themselves. I decided to start this podcast because I wanted to show other women how I and women like me took their life's disruptions and changed their lives and the lives of others, not to mention broke the mold in their industries. Look, branding is all about who you are at your core, the person that your soul is calling you to be. So get ready to step into your power, own your authenticity, and show up like the boss that you are. If you enjoy all aspects of personal development, you are in the right place. Let's get started. I'm in the living space of the house that we're in, and I'm with my friend Darieth Chisolm. For those of you who don't know Darieth, she's one of my best friends in the whole wide world. And
we really travel the whole wide world together.
Absolutely. And we are ready to talk to you about some disruption. I'm over here sending a message to someone else. All right, so people, hello, welcome.
Well, thank you. I have been taking in some of this just in crossing because I've been working out on the patio, which is gorgeous, and we've had this incredible view and beautiful piece here. So I'm really delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad you're here, and we want a presence for all of you. Like when you work location independently, you get to do life the way that you want to do it, and this woman does it beautifully. Like she's teaching me, and we realized this morning that the last 3 Januaries we have been together, and it wasn't like but by on purpose, but we've been together. We've been doing work. We work the whole time that we're here, but we put in time for pleasure and play, which I think is what we're going to be talking about today.
That's what we're going to talk about, is pleasure and play with work and life. Yeah.
So do we want to start with the conversation that happened this morning? Like, how do we want to get into this?
However you'd like to get into it.
So I believe that there's this idea that when you are working or when that you're in work mode, that you can't have pleasure, or there's no pleasure associated with it. And I believe that we are disrupting that paradigm because yesterday, Darieth was working inside, so I was working on the patio where she was today, and there's a chair that's right out here, and it called to me, and it said, "Go lay down and take a nap." And I thought, that's ridiculous. It's the middle of the day. I'm working today. Why am I going to go sit in this chair and take a damn nap, right? And I was like, because I want to, and not from a place of defiance, and not from a place of being irresponsible. It was what my soul was led to do. And when women begin to operate from a place of pleasure, or what's going to be pleasurable for me, I believe we become better business owners. So let's talk about that.
Yes, definitely. I think also that I know that there is an internal sense of connection to whatever we're doing when we're coming from a place of enjoyment. Call it enjoyment, pleasure, play, but not feeling out of necessity or need or the confines or structure, but actually stepping into what would feel good, what would make me happy, what would be the most pleasurable way to experience something. And I've often told a lot of my clients along the way that when you are faced with something that normally would make you feel like, ooh, I don't want to do this, it's like, it's kicking and screaming. It's like, then to reframe by simply asking yourself what would be the most pleasurable way to experience it. And so I've just used that like as a litmus test. So I have a word that I also use, which is this exquisite, which helps me to, that's my word for this year, but it helps me to reframe the choice around something. But you could also use that in the same context to say, how is this really pleasurable? And if not, how can I make it more pleasurable, right? Like, do I need to light a candle? Do I need to put some music on? Do I need to say no when you think you need to say yes?
Yeah, and yesterday was a perfect example of that. So last night, or actually it was yesterday. It was last night on the East Coast, but it was yesterday that I had another presentation, and it went really long. And we were supposed to go out to dinner, and our host Katie, we were going to take her out to dinner last night. And as I was working, I was on mute, and Darieth was like, "What are we doing for dinner?" Like, "I'm starving, da 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 blah blah blah." And I was like, "I'm starving too." And she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go get dinner." So she goes out, pick up dinner, and I'm gonna let her tell the rest of the story because this is her expertise. This is what she does well. So you go out to pick up dinner, and what happens?
Well, a couple of things. One is that I was like, not just a dinner. I'm like, no, we're going to get pizza. And we're not just going to get any old kind of pizza. We're going to get the pizza that like has all the good stuff on it. And, you know, it's like pizza's always been that thing for any of you all who are on a health journey when you say, I'm not having pizza. I can't have pizza. No, you know, and I'm like, no, because that's going to feel good. Like pizza is going to feel good. And what goes great with pizza? Red wine, right? And chocolate. And so I go out and I pick up these incredible pizzas and red wine, and I'm sitting in this place waiting for it. It's just, and I'm like, this is such a nice place. We have to come back here. And then you're like, this is really cool. And then I'm sitting there and I hear French music, and I love French music. It reminds me of my times in France. And I said, when I get back, we're here in Mexico. We're going to eat some Italian pizza, and we're listening to French music and drinking wine that I believe is from Argentina. So I'm like, this is going to be the whole cultural experience. And then we, of course, deepened into the conversations that we've just been having here all together. And it was just such a great night. And, you know, for me, even afterwards, as they went to bed, I was like, now what do I want to do? And I'm like, I want to dance. I'm turned on Mac Miller, who I just discovered not long ago. And Pittsburgh people from Pittsburgh and Mac Miller. But then I start dancing, and I'm like, yeah, you know, this is, and it all felt really good. And then I went to bed with some meditation and candles going, and I thought, you know, sometimes we feel like, do I need to be doing things in this certain way, in this very constructed way? And it's like, if you're really going to be a disruptor, if it doesn't start in here internally with what feels good to you, how is it that you're ever going to express it outside through your creativity and your work and your mission and your purpose? And so this entire discussion around disrupting, it's like, first let's disrupt the internal blocks and bullshit that we've created that have put us in boxes in order for us to live a life that truly is that we're designing. And from there, I believe we can create businesses and do the work that we need to do in the world, is because we've come from a very aligned place that says, I'm available to work from a space of pleasure, fun, freedom, excitement, and then my work comes out into the world.
Absolutely.
Don't know if anybody can relate to that, but if you can, type it in the chat and we'll see if we can either play a little bit with that with you. Yeah, if you feel that, great. If you don't resonate with it, that's fine too, but that's where we're coming from.
It is, and it is where we're coming from. And it's interesting that you said what you said about the disruption part, because I happened to be on the phone with a friend, and they were like, "You're eating pizza in Mexico?" And we were like, "Yeah." And by the way, we're also listening to French music, and the wine comes from Argentina, and like, we don't care. Like, we get to create what we want based on, I'll remember for you, based on what, okay, good. Based on what we want to design for ourselves. And while it was her version of what she desired in the moment, it became part of what we did too. So as she mentioned, she wanted to dance. And at the end of, you know, the presentation, and then we had another huge conversation, the pleasurable part for me was going to bed, right? And she's like, no, we need to dance. I was like, bring the music into the bathroom while I wash my face. We'll dance in the bathroom, but then I'm going to get in the bed. And I made that okay. And she didn't make me wrong for it. And we both got what we wanted. We both got what we desired to do. And so when we live from that, and when we come from that desire and what is going to serve us and serve the other people. Like, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, definitely. Hi, Trisha. I miss you so much. Yes, very brilliant. Thank you, love. Fireside chat. Yes, and I miss you. And what is this, Dava?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, now maybe you can read it.
So disruption. So prioritizing pleasure is especially disruption of epic proportions for women of color. So
yeah,
let's talk about that.
I love that. That's awesome. You're right. Like, I think part of what's happened, just people in general, like we could get off on this conversation about what the patriarchy has done, but everything that's ever been crafted for people to stay in line and be in control is what most of us, right, are ready to bust out of, right? Like I left a very prominent career in television news. I anchored the news for the NBC affiliate for 20 some years, and people thought I was crazy that I would walk away from a very stellar, successful career to go after my dreams and build the businesses that I've had and traveled and my documentary and my social justice work. Like I've just always been on this very purposeful path that has been about, is this what's next for me? And I'm less concerned about what other people have to say and how other people see it, and more concerned about, is this what I need for my life in this moment? And I don't know that I knew then that was being a disruptor as much as I understand it now. But what I did know was that I was following my own bliss and following my own path. And sometimes when you do that, the unicorns that we probably all are, because you probably wouldn't be on here if you weren't, we do look like disruptors, right? We look like people that are, like, but think of all of the creative ways or the creative things that have come out of people just getting out of the box and following their path and their joy and their bliss. And that is seated in pleasure. It's seated in that. And if we go there first and then, or at least whatever way that we can find our way there, and then decide what's the most pleasurable path. What does my heart tell me I want to do? What's my calling? What's my passion? That all comes from that. And it's just reminding ourselves that it's not even that we're deserving of it or that we're worthy of it. It just needs to be an everyday experience. It just is. And we don't have to make it mean something, because as I always say, nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give to it. But we can also decide that because that's going to be rooted in my everyday existence, from there things will grow.
Absolutely.
And think about it. We get what we focus on, right? So if our focus and our energy is held in, I don't want to do this, and restriction and confinement, and what are the masses doing, and what should I do, we end up creating things that probably aren't pleasurable for other people, because we didn't come from a real sense of pleasure and enjoyment and happiness. And so it's really about maybe disrupting our thoughts around allowing pleasure in as often as we can.
Yes. And I think that one of the things that we're starting to notice, or that I'm starting to notice, is this whole idea about common sense. And it came to me this morning. I was thinking about this, and I was like, what actually is common sense? Common sense feels to me like the opposite of what the fuck I want to be doing, right? And, she doesn't have any common sense, or common sense should have told you to do blah, 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 right? And I feel like that's another part of the common sense is equal to should do, instead of who do I get to be in this moment?
And what do I want to experience?
Yeah, because common sense, what?
Ooh, no.
Yeah, so let's throw out the rule book. Throw out the common sense, throw out what I should be doing. Let's get more into what is it that I desire. Like, we were having a conversation with someone this morning, and they were like, well, I want to do this, but this thing is going to be so pleasurable, but I don't know. I got this other thing going. I might not want to mix the two together. And we were like, huh?
I mean, it was like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me you don't want to have fun, and you don't want to do this, and you do and without judgment, right? Because we're all on the journey, and we're all trying to figure it out. But it is interesting how often we limit ourselves from doing the fun things or doing the experience because somehow we've been programmed that if we do that, then we take away from whatever it is that we're trying to create or do. And it's like, no, those two things can work together.
Absolutely.
They don't have to be mutually exclusive or set aside. And I know, I mean, I used to do it a lot when I was in a structured career, you know, and had to show up at a place, like you don't do these things, right? And it's part of the reason why I decided to become an entrepreneur so that I could have that level of
You can have
freedom.
an opinion about what the structure is
Right.
and even disrupt that pattern, right?
Exactly. But I think even within the confines of employment or family or anything that we are working in concert with, it doesn't mean that we really put our truest desires on the shelves. It's like, no, everybody bring it into the circle. Let's all contribute to what would make us happy individually and together. And now let's see what can happen.
Tell the folks about your epiphany. I think, let me see.
We were in the season of epiphany.
We were together, of course, but I want to say it was this summer because we had an amazing time this summer. Right?
Summer and fall.
Summer and fall. But at some point, we were supposed to be, and I'm using that on purpose right now. The purpose of the trip to her place in Detroit was for us to work. And the work didn't happen because she's like, I don't even want to use that word anymore. So I want you to talk about like your journey into this, like I want like this, everything needs to be pleasurable. So why you don't use the word work anymore? And then what was your decision?
I also don't use the word challenge.
So what was the decision that you made that got you to this point?
I think most of us are, as we're evolving, as we're looking for what's next, right? Like how many times have you said, what's next? What's the next thing? And so often, like many of us who are poly interested in lots of different things, we can whip something up and do it and it's next, right?
As a coach.
As a coach, I mean, I do that as a coach, but I think people who are creators and people who are looking to do anything creative, you're always looking for the what next. It's what drives us, as we should. That is evolution. But for me, I got to a point where I was like, but if it is not bringing me pleasure, if I am finding myself not lit up about it, I'm not available to continue to do it because my spirit and my heart and my soul are not in it. And somehow what I started to identify with the use of the word work, I mean, I have to be careful the way I say this, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's like I can redefine it and not use the word work, but find a different word that is associated with what it is that I'm doing. Because my association at the time was like, work was work. I mean, you know what work is like heavy, dark. Like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, that's not what I want to experience in anything that I do or anything that I'm involved in. And so I'm not even going to use the word work. I'm not even going to define what I do as work. I need a different word to define it. And I also feel that way about challenge. Like challenge, if you say, this is a challenge, well, you're damn right it's a challenge if you use the word challenge. And
it'll continue to be a challenge.
It'll always be a challenge. So like I refrain from using the word challenge because I think we somehow use it and say, well, this will be a challenge, but I'm going to do it. Well, you've already created the challenge by the use of the word. And I also practice as much as I can conscious language. So I'm clear that the language that I'm using is also creating the experience and therefore creating the result. So I decided that I would change that. Now, energetically, I also wasn't available to do it either because I was reframing what I wanted my experience to be. And I believe that for most people, if you really are kind of ready to step off on the edge, and I've stepped off the edge,
jumped off the cliff,
jumped off the plane, jumped out of the plane,
did it all.
many times in one lifetime, right? And I know that there's so much excitement in that. I'm ready to jump off another cliff. Trust me, there's something to be said about being on the edge of something and teetering over it and deciding, okay, here we go, next adventure. You know, and for those of you who have ever jumped out of a plane, you know that experience, or jumped off of anything, or jumped out of anything, whether it's a relationship or your bodies or, you know, your job, or there is so much in that experience that's enjoyable. It is the journey, right? The journey is way more enjoyable than the actual destination. Like, you hit the ground when you jump out of the plane, you're like, can we do it again? Like, you know, so that is really what I'm looking to discover. And so what I knew that I needed to do was to get clear about the fact that no more could I create what this was in terms of what I saw as work, and be available to manifest whatever was next. And sometimes there's a releasing of something. You need to cut the cord, release it, de-story it, reframe it. And you need to do it in the physical as much as you need to do it internally, as much as you need to do it spiritually. And I mean, that's part of the reason that I'm here in Todos Santos, Mexico, is that I made the intention in June when I was here that this would be the place to begin the new year, to begin what's next. And in order for me to do that, I really needed to not sever in that way, but to recondition and I know whatever it is, it's going to be amazing, but it's like just understanding.
You made a decision.
I made a decision, exactly, because that's what a decision is, to decide, to cut. But even in that was a pleasurable decision. There was no, you know, no like regrets, but more of saying, okay, this is a period of rest. This is a period of play. This is a period of pleasure, so that I can come back more full, more whole, more ready. And sometimes we don't give ourselves that space and time and attention, or we can't afford to. And I understand that. But at the same time, sometimes you cannot not afford to. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
going back to that common sense thing.
Right.
Common sense would tell me to do X, when really what I want to do is this.
Yes.
Right.
So that when you go back to it, you're even more alive and more fresh, available. And, you know, we can't just keep plowing through things and then expecting it to, you know, continue to do. Even, you know, everything rests. That's why we have nighttime, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's important to do that.
Absolutely. All right, so we got to wrap it up.
Okay.
This conversation
That was
so
fast.
Well, so we definitely want to, you know, Darieth's going to have all of her information on the sheets and things that we're going to send to you guys. But if you had one last thought or one last idea from disruption, or having a disruption, or being disrupted, or disrupting, what would that be? And what are the lessons that you would like for them to take today? Or a lesson?
So I'll start with that. And what I believe is that you know internally when something clicks and you hear it, that is your lesson, right? Like, it's not something that I need to say. It's that if I said anything that clicked or resonated with you, follow that as the lesson, right? If there was something that said, oh, maybe I should take naps more often, or maybe I should decide that I'm going to ask myself the question, what is the most pleasurable way to do this? You know, or maybe I am going to just decide I got to come back to that project later because I need a break. I don't know what that is for you, so I'm not going to suggest it as a final message, but I'm going to invite you to consider if there was something in what I said that felt like the message, to follow it.
Awesome.
So I would say that, and I would also say that, you know, life is a journey. It is. We are here for the journey and not for the destination. So enjoy the journey.
Yes. Yes, and find some pleasure along the way. Yes. Awesome. Amazing. Thank you, my friend. Thanks for listening to the Brand Disruptors podcast. I'm your host, Mia Lamont. And if you like what you just heard, I hope that you will pass along our web address at www.mialamont.com/podcast to your friends and colleagues. And please leave us a positive review on iTunes. Download this episode and any other episode that you found to be helpful. And be sure to check out our previous episodes and join me next time with another edition of the Brand Disruptors podcast.